All right, welcome back. This is video 8 of Build Your Economic Power, and the name of this video is called The Hidden Cost of Being Fully Dependent. So financial dependency changes how people think, behave, and live. Dependency changes how you show up in life, as we talked about in our last video a little bit. Income activation is mental freedom. So most people think that financial dependency is only about money. They believe the only risk is losing income. But dependency affects how much more, way more than your bank account. It affects how you actually think, how you behave, how you show up in your daily life. When all of your income comes from one source, that one income, something happens, something begins to happen. You start organizing your life around protecting that source. Your decisions change. Your confidence changes. Your tolerance for stress changes. And most people don't even notice a shift while it's happening because dependency develops slowly, quietly, but the psychological cost is so real. And if you never recognize it, you can spend decades living under pressure you didn't even realize that you accepted. The anxiety of having one income source. Let's start with something many adults experience: background anxiety. Not panic, not constant fear, just a quiet awareness that your financial stability depends on one system, one employer, one paycheck, one role. Even if your job is stable, your mind knows something important. If that income stops, everything changes. Bills don't pause though. Rent doesn't pause. Mortgage payments don't pause. Food doesn't pause. Everything actually gets more expensive over time, as we know. So even if things feel stable, don't be fooled. There's always a small layer of financial pressure underneath. You might not think about it every day, but it's there. Believe me, it's there. It shows up when layoffs happen in your industry, in your company. It shows up when your company starts to restructure. It shows up when your boss changes. That background pressure influences your decisions because your brain is constantly protecting your primary income source. It's worried, it has fear, so on and so forth. So, fear of the boss. Let's talk about another effect of dependency: fear of authority. When your income comes from one place, the people controlling that place gain significant influence over your life, your manager, your leadership team, your company structure. Now, this doesn't mean every boss is bad. There's some great bosses out there. Many are supportive. Many bosses are supportive. Many are fair. But the power dynamic still exists because your income depends on their approval. That affects how people behave. Employers tolerate environments they should, employees tolerate environments they would otherwise leave. They stay quiet in situations where they might normally speak. They avoid conflict. They avoid risk. Why? Why is that? Because losing that job would create financial disruption. Dependency changes the power balance, and the power imbalance affects behavior. Fear of layoffs. Let's talk about that. Something that happens across all industries. Layoff rumors. Even in stable companies, these conversations appear. Maybe you hear about budget cuts. Maybe you hear about restructuring. Maybe you hear about departments being reduced. Suddenly the atmosphere starts to shift. People become cautious. People become anxious. People begin protecting themselves. Why? It's in our nature. Because they know something important. If they lose their position, the entire income structure disappears. That level of exposure creates psychological stress. It's about human survival instincts. Your brain protects the system that provides your resources, but that protection can limit your freedom. Career stagnation. Dependency can also lead to stagnation. Not because people lack ambition, because risk becomes harder. Let's say someone wants to try something new. They switch industries. They start a project, explore an idea, but their income depends completely on their current role. Suddenly, the exploration feels dangerous. They start thinking, what if it doesn't work? What if I lose my position? What if I make the wrong move? Even if they feel capable of more, even if they feel unfulfilled, because dependency makes movement feel risky. Over time, that hesitation compounds. Years pass, opportunities disappear, and people begin starting to tell themselves, this is just how life works. But it's often not life, it's dependency. Here's the psychological weight of it all. Let's zoom out for a moment here. Imagine someone whose entire income comes from one source. They rely on that paycheck for everything: housing, food, transportation, healthcare, savings. Their entire financial life depends on one structure and one income. That creates a lot of weight on that one system. And that weight affects how people carry themselves. They protect the system. They stay within the boundaries of the system. Even those boundaries, even if those boundaries limit growth. Dependency doesn't just affect income, it shapes behavior. You see, it shapes confidence, it shapes decisions. That's why understanding dependency is so important. Because once you see it, you start asking a different question. How can I reduce it? Expansion. How dependency changes identity. Here's something many people don't even talk about. Dependency slowly changes identity. When someone spends years relying entirely on one income source, they begin to see themselves as someone who can only earn money in that current system. They their identity becomes connected to their job title, their company, their role. That identity feels stable, but it also becomes limiting. Because once someone believes their earning ability only exists inside that system, they stop looking outside of it. They stop exploring other ways to create value. They stop experimenting. They stop testing ideas, not because they lack the ability, because their identity narrowed. But something interesting happens when someone activates income outside their job, even one time. Maybe they help someone solve a problem. Maybe they sell a service. Maybe they use a skill they already have. That experience changes their identity. Suddenly they realize something powerful. Income can come from more than one direction and one source. They realize that realization alone can shift how someone sees themselves. They stop seeing themselves as just an employee. They begin seeing themselves as someone who can create value independently. And that identity shift changes behavior. They become more curious. They become more experimental, more confident. Because once you realize you can generate income in multiple ways, your relationship with work changes. Your job becomes one part of your economic life, not the whole thing or the whole structure. And that shift is where economic power begins. Here's the real solution. Let's be clear about this. The solution is not quitting your job. The solution is not reckless risk. The solution is activation. Activation of skills, activation of opportunities, activation of additional income streams. Because every additional income source reduces dependency on that one job, that one income. And reduced dependency increases freedom, freedom of choice. But it's not overnight freedom, it's structural freedom. Freedom to make decisions without fear, dominating the whole process. Freedom to explore new opportunities. Freedom to step away when necessary. So let's close here. So here's the idea I want you to think about. Dependency changes how you show up in life. It affects your confidence. It affects your choices. It affects how much risk you're willing to take. But when you begin activating additional income, something powerful happens. Your mindset changes. Your confidence grows. Your options expand. And options are where economic power lives. Because income activation is more than financial. Income activation is mental freedom. Hey, check it out. In the next video, I'm going to show you something practical, a simple framework you can use to run a 30-day income experiment. Not a business, an experiment. Because experiments reduce fear and experiments create momentum. So, if you like this video, please subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell. And please make comments. I appreciate that. That helps with the algorithm. So this is James, and I'll see you on the next video from Economic Power. Thank you. God bless you. Take care.